Good morning. Good morning to everyone who has joined us. My name is Brunilda. I'm with Passages of Distinction. And I am today with Mohan and with Seema. So I am showing you this great photo of Seema to introduce her to you. This was a photo taken just a few months ago when I had the opportunity to go to India, and my welcome was a day with Seema, who is not only a scholar, but probably one of the best guides I've had in 25 years of traveling. So this was us on a rickshaw. It was just a fantastic time. I know that you're going to enjoy this session as much as I enjoyed my day with Seema. And of course, we're also joined with by the owner of TravelScope India, who is a phenomenal guy. Not just is he a fantastic owner, but he's a great ambassador of India. And I am sure you're going to learn a lot about him as well. So with that, I will hand it over to both of you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Good evening, good morning to all our guests and who are participating. Today we're going to take you to another very sacred city of India. We bring you an interaction on Varanasi, the city of eternal light. And to illuminate us with her knowledge, we have with us Seema Srivastav, an art historian and a very passionate storyteller. To her credit, Seema has led tours for several prestigious museums and institutions, and also has led prominent personalities. Many of TravelScope's guests have had the privilege of traveling with Seema and have gained from the immense knowledge that she brings on her trips. Today we will talk about the many facets of Varanasi that include its ancient history, culture, the significance it holds for Hindus, their beliefs and the rituals that they perform on the banks of the river Ganges, the mother of all rivers, all Indian rivers, revered by the Indians as Mother Ganga or Ma Ganga. Varanasi is also the birthplace of Buddhism, and has attracted saints and seers and seekers from time immemorial. And it continues to attract a large number of pilgrims from within India and abroad, and also travelers from other countries. Today, Seema is going to share with us her impressions of her growing up days in Varanasi, to her more recent experiences accompanying travelers who come to Varanasi. So yes, so I'd like to also ask Seema to say a quick hello to our guests, and then we'll start this wonderful conversation with her.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Brunilda, and thank you, Mohan. I'm delighted to be here this morning, and I hope this little chat that we are going to have is going to be exciting. And I'm very excited to also share a few things of my own experiences.
Thank you so much, Seema. Thank you very much. So Brunilda, maybe you want to bring up the first picture. So Seema, my question to you is, what according to you is the essence of Varanasi in a religious, in a spiritual, and in a cultural context?
Thank you, Mohan. I would like to start with a very popular and a quote which a lot of people know, and I think I'll start by repeating it. It was in 1897 when an American Indophile by the name of Mark Twain visited Varanasi. And this is what he had to say. Banaras is older than history, older than tradition, older even than legend, and looks twice as old as all of them put together. I think from an author coming from a nation that was barely a century old at the time he came, Varanasi must have seemed really, really old. And in fact, it was a very apt statement because it has been historically, archaeologically, and scientifically proved that this particular city has had a continuous habitation for the longest time in the world. And historians have also proved that it was in 2nd millennium BC when this city really was inhabited. So it definitely is quite interesting to note Mark Twain's words. Just to tell you a little about its location, it's located in the northern part of the country, and it is on the banks, in fact, the west bank of the river Ganges. It is one of the most important city when we talk about a holy city. In fact, it is one of the 7 sacred cities of Hindu faith. And it is known by many names. You all know of it as Varanasi, but traditionally what people call, or even I refer to it as Banaras. And the name mentioned in the ancient texts or the sacred texts is Kashi. To elaborate a little more on that, I must tell you, it is also called the city of Shiva. I'm sure all of you know he is one of the gods of the Trinity. We have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. I'm just wanting to tell you from that reference, it is called the city of Shiva. It is believed that Shiva and his wife Parvati, or consort Parvati, actually were the first permanent residents of this city. And it is from that time that time started ticking. In fact, he turned the clocks on. And so he is revered in the city more than any other divine gods. And in fact, it is this city which also has a temple. It has, of course, 3,000 or more shrines and temples dedicated not only to Shiva, but a lot of those million gods that we have. But it is in this city at a temple called the Vishwanath Temple, that is dedicated to Shiva, is the epicenter and the most holiest spot where it is believed that Shiva actually created the Tower of Light. And a Tower of Light is referred to as Kash or Kashi. So that is basically the referential point of the holiness of the city. But the city is not only holy for the Hindus, it is also very holy, as Mohan had mentioned, for the Buddhists and Jains, which is another faith, which is similar to Buddhism, but of course, Buddhism has definitely a larger fan following. And it is a place just about 6 miles from Varanasi called Sarnath, where at the Deer Park, it is when Lord Buddha attained enlightenment, he actually went to Sarnath. And at the Deer Park there, he actually gives his first sermon to his 5 disciples and sets in motion the law of dharma, as it's called. And also, this is the starting point of his organization of the monastic order called Sangha.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. My God, I just felt that I'm on that site right now. Thank you so much. Brunilda, we had a little suggestion from Susan that maybe it'll be good to slide up while Seema is speaking to just make it a little more relevant. So maybe we can bring up the second picture. So Seema, continuing on, the river Ganges is synonymous to Varanasi in many ways. Can you tell us a little bit about the significance of the river and that we Indians also refer as Mother Ganga or Ma Ganga?
You're very right. Varanasi and Ganga are just like 2 sides of a coin. It's very synonymous to each other. But before anything else, I must tell you, she's not just a geographical body, like many rivers in the world are. She's revered. She's a goddess. She's holy. And that's why the relevance of the term Mother Ganga or Ma Ganga. And interestingly, like most civilizations, the famous civilizations of the world have sort of been born next to a river. It is no different for Ganga. And Ganga also nurtures many cities as it passes through the whole country. But just to tell you geographically, uh, her origin point is in the Himalayas, and she starts off from a glacier and coming down to the foothills and then the flatlands, and then she sort of flows through towards the east and then flows out at the Bay of Bengal. Now, what is interesting is on the way, she nurtures many, many cities, and she is the lifeline for the people for the purpose of drinking water, and her waters are used for irrigation. And in fact, it is very interesting that the Indo-Gangetic plain is one of the most fertile parts of the country. But at this point, Mohan, I must tell you something very interesting, and to all the listeners and viewers out there, that in India, all our storytelling, whether it is reality, is sort of twined and intertwined with mythology. And at this point, I'm very, very keen to share a small tale. I know we are always having a constraint of time, so I'm going to put it in a nutshell. Otherwise, these stories can go on for days, just like how it takes ages for the Ganga to flow. So the story is about the birth and origin of Ganga. Because she is a goddess, and she is, it's the story is really important. So she was born when one of the other gods of the Trinity, that is Vishnu, actually pierced a hole into the universe, and she flowed out and came onto the heavens. Now, the rest of the story is more interesting, how she comes on the earth. There was a king by the name of Bhagirath, and he performed a very, very long, about 1,000 years of penance, so that he could actually relieve his 60,000 ancestors who were actually cursed by a sage, and they were converted into ashes. So he prayed to the lords so that Ganga would come down on earth and actually liberate these ancestors. So Ganga is ready to come, but the worry was that she would come down in such a force that the earth would be destroyed in a deluge. And that's the time Shiva comes to the rescue. Shiva has always come at just the right point, and he says, yeah, she can come down. And just to save the pressure and the flow, he let her meander and come smoothly through his matted tresses. And then she flows down very smoothly on earth and actually liberates all those cursed 60,000 ancestors. Well, it's a story, but I love it and I believe it. But the interesting part is, because she liberated them, she becomes holier than ever. Because she is now on earth with a duty and a purpose to liberate everybody. And that is how she sort of flows ahead. The second and important and more significant phase is when she reaches Varanasi, the city we are talking about. To us, the city was holy. And when the river flows at the banks of the city, it is not that the city is holy. For Varanasi, the river became so holy. So the purpose of everybody was to now come to the banks of the river, come down and have a holy dip. There is a very important belief in Hindu philosophy and Hindu faith. And the idea is that if you purify yourself or bathe in the river Ganges at Varanasi, you will be purified, of course. But if you were departing this world, you were dying, or you did depart, and you were cremated at the banks of the river Ganges at Varanasi, and your ashes are actually immersed in the river over there, it is surely that you will attain salvation or moksha, and you will be free from that rigmarole of life and rebirth. And that is a belief most Hindus, I also believe in. And somewhere, I can't say so, but I always desire that if I pass on, I should be cremated at the banks at Varanasi.
Wow, that's intense. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I just for the guests, the just some technical details. The river actually runs about 2,600 kilometers from its source in Gomukh to all the way to where she merges with the sea at Ganga Sagar and passes through 4 different states of India. So we'll have to quickly move on to our next question, Seema, because in the interest of time, we have to cover everything. We can't leave out anything. So just quickly tell us, what has attracted saints and seers, scholars and seekers to a place like Varanasi?
Okay. So I've already mentioned about the sanctity of the river. That is one of the reasons why so many pilgrims, thousands of them, flock to Varanasi, whether it's on a pilgrimage or their religious routes, or they make a special trip to Varanasi to cleanse themselves, or if somebody is departing. But you know, in our Hindu system or our whole life, it is not only our cremation for which we would like to go to Varanasi. Throughout our lives, from birth, through our student age, or to our adulthood, or towards our growing old age, there are many, many rituals which are considered very sacred to be performed at the ghats of Varanasi. Oh yes, I've used a new term, ghats. So I think I'd like to just explain what ghats are. Ghats, that is Ghats, ghats are basically little platforms or embankments which are actually located on the waterfront with steps leading down to the river. And there are more than 80 ghats on the crescent-shaped waterfront of the layout of the city of Varanasi. And each has a story, each has a purpose, and each has a beautiful narrative connected to it. Some are also connected to some historical perspectives of the city. And they are beautifully, they have beautiful structures like temples, of course, which is innumerable, but palaces and forts and small mansions and public buildings. And these are the ghats and some specific ones where these kind of rituals are generally performed over there. And that is one of the things. Apart from that, this city is also a learner's paradise. It's a place to learn. And something I'd like to share, we know of educational institutions. Varanasi is one of the very, very important place for having 4 of Asia's largest institutions, universities, one only for sacred texts, where students come for Vedic studies and Hinduism and theology, while we have the Banaras Hindu University, one of the very, very important universities. It has a Sanskrit university and then a university for Buddhist studies. So obviously, Banaras is known for these other aspects as well. Apart from that, Banaras is also known to be a very important center for music. And I want to just throw a little light on this. Music is universal. But just like you have classical music, in India, we have many schools and genres of classical styles named after cities. You know, we have a Jaipur Gharana. Gharana is basically the school. The same way, Varanasi has what is called the Banaras Gharana. And many of these famous musicians or, you know, instrument players and singers and vocalists were born and brought up there and developed their style over there. So there are many such studios and schools to learn music. That is another reason why many people come there. And along with that, it is an important place for yoga and Ayurveda. You know, Shiva himself was known as the leader of the yogic studies. And that is why these are things for which people do visit this city as well.
Yeah, my God. Yeah, now we know the multiple reasons for which people come to Varanasi. And I also know of a lot of people from foreign countries coming to learn Hindi in Varanasi. So moving on to our next question, this is something that's going to take you back, or take you down memory lane. You spent your childhood in Varanasi growing up there, and you know, we see how passionate you are about the city. So how was your experience there growing up?
Oh, yes, it gets nostalgic. I always get a lump in my throat because immediately I'm transported to the waterfront, where my great-grandfather had built a beautiful mansion facing the water, facing the river. And we had a wonderful joint family of more than 24 people. My great-grandfather was actually a physician to the Maharaja of Benares. And our house was always full of people, in the sense musicians and literature students, and my father also, grandfather, they were all, it was always bustling with life. We had a shrine at home, by the way, and we had our own personal priest. So we always woke up to these bells of the temple at home itself. But my most amazing and bestest, if there's a word like that, is the memory of getting up in the morning and rushing to the river with my cousins and uncle to bathe. And I remember, I don't think there was any day when I did not run to bathe in the river. Or those wonderful boat rides with my grandfather and great-grandfather as he was getting older to go and visit the Maharaja. So that was another great memory. But the fondest memory is of my grand aunt, who was a widow and was not really involved in too many activities. She used to just stay there. But when we went to bathe and we came out and sat on the ghat, she would tell us such wonderful stories from mythology, bardic tales, folklores. And I'm so thankful to her, though she is not here anymore, because these are the stories I have not only grown up with, they become the essence of all my wonderful journeys with my visitors and the travelers. And I think that is the best part of the essence of any city or any place, is the stories connected to it. So sitting on the ghats with my guests and sipping a cup of chai and sharing these stories is, I think, the most memorable thing that I can remember.
Wow. I think those who go with you to Varanasi, I think, are the most luckiest people. I can sense that. So as someone who's had such a deep connection with the city growing up and then going back with guests, give us some insiders' insights into Varanasi that many of us don't know about.
Oh dear, there are so many. Maybe we'll need a completely separate webinar for the kind of things hidden in crevices, nooks, crannies, and those little bylanes and the labyrinth of bylanes. But yes, I'd like to share a few. Of course, the first thing is that Varanasi is one on the world map for being a very important city for silk and muslin. Silk weaving. It is one of the very important centers of silk weaving. And in fact, muslin weaving started much earlier, during about 2000 years ago. And it was the fabric for the saints and sages. And because it was something which sort of added on to their simplicity and humility. And it is much later in 16th century when the silk industry really came up. It was small scale industry because it was only weavers in their little homes and their guilds or their little kind of groups and clusters. And it was the time when the Mughal ruler Akbar was ruling, and he had a very relaxed view towards a lot of things connected to even the Hindu faith. And he's the one who patronized this particular industry more. And because of the Muslim connection, because of the Mughal connection, we also see a lot of styles and motifs and techniques changing. And Varanasi developed something which was beautiful called brocade. Brocade is basically not only silk weaving, but it is silk weaving with gold and silver thread. And that is something which is quite mind-blowing. And even today, when the visitors are there and I take them, they're completely amazed at the old, age-old traditional styles continuing and keeping the legacy on. And I think every bride or every Indian woman at some point would definitely like to own a Banarsi sari. And a lot of my foreign guests have taken saris back home along with stoles and other things. So that is one of the very important reasons by which Varanasi is known. Apart from that, it is a center for gold jewelry. There are goldsmiths and silversmiths. And let me take you through the bylanes. That is amazing. Everybody only thinks that, Varanasi has that facade of the riverfront. Just behind that, you'll get lost in the maze and the labyrinth, of the little gullies, as they are called. And they are completely decorated with shops selling wooden work, lacquerware, toys, brass, pots and pans. You name it, it's all there and colorful and bright in these little clusters in the gullies. And then, of course, Varanasi is also the city of fragrances, whether it's incense or perfumes. And it's also soulful and beautiful out there. But I don't think everyone else knows, but Mohan knows that I'm a foodie. And I can't stop myself from telling you about the amazing bylanes having the best food that is there, the best street food. Can you imagine if a city has names of the streets named after food? So, I mean, you can imagine having a pasta lane or a cake avenue. Similarly to that, Varanasi has a kachori gully. And kachoris are basically these savory, puffed up little fried breads which are filled with lentil. Oh God, my mouth is watering. And it's a breakfast dish along with these, juicy spirals of sweet called jalebi. That is the traditional breakfast for a Banarsi. And along with that, maybe a khoya gully. Khoya basically is a milk product. And that whole lane sells all kinds of milk products, right from cottage cheese to milk froth, or to the cream called malayo. I mean, you'll have to live there for a long time to be able to savor and flavor everything. It has also got a gorgeous spice market. And to top it all up, a wholesale market of lovely marigolds, which are not only used for spiritual purposes, but also for decoration, and just makes the city look so beautiful.
Thank you. We just got a comment. You're all hungry. And I love the new name that you have given for jalebi, juicy spirals. Wow. I think the juicy sweet spirals. If somebody asks me how to describe jalebi, I think I have to remember that. So we're almost coming towards the end, but I'll have to request Brunilda to give us a couple of more minutes because this is Banaras and it's going to take a little time. But so my next question, and Brunilda, if you could just bring up the picture of that boat ride. Now, when you revisit Varanasi as someone who leads trips, how does it feel when people from far-fetched countries come, and how do they resonate to that soulful experience that the city offers?
Oh, this picture is such an absolute brilliant picture with my friend there, who is one of the best flutists I've heard. And especially, to start with, Varanasi is timeless. Varanasi doesn't change. But it is interesting that I've had so many visitors, Mohan, so many visitors I've accompanied to this beautiful city. And it's a very subjective reaction, of course, of most of them. But one thing I can assure you, and one thing I so feel happy about, is the fact that none of my guests ever go with a frown. And when I wake up, I go to the hotel 5 o'clock in the morning, and, I wake them up. They generally get down, and they always have this expression, why the hell are we getting up so early in the morning? And it suddenly changes when we reach the ghats and we get onto the boat. And especially, with the travel scope programs, these boats are so beautifully decorated, and, it's festive. They've got the marigolds there and it's colorful. And my friend, the flutist there to, just make the experience perfect. Well, they don't realize it because it's cold, it's dark, and it's misty. When they get onto this boat ride, and as the boat smoothly moves into the water, the flute playing in a very soulful raga, and the sun sort of just about coming out, the buildings changing their color from gray to slight yellow to orange to red. The birds start twittering, and this beautiful flute. It's the most amazing. I get speechless. The guests are mesmerized. I don't talk at that moment. I want them to have a tete-a-tete with Varanasi at that point. And you know what? The waterfront suddenly starts looking like a theater. And this whole spectacle is happening like an opera with music right there. And we become participants in this whole thing. So that is, of course, one of my favorites, along with, of course, the evening aarti, when, of course, thousands of lamps are lit in homage of the river, which is dark, and suddenly these lights and fragrance. It's like an opera out there. But, there's also a very funny incident I have to share. Sorry, Brunilda, if we are running out of time, but I have to share this. Banarsis, that's, of course, the locals of Banaras. They have this habit of chewing betel leaf. And not one, their mouth is generally full of it. Plus, their little clay cup with tea, nice tea, and they're sitting on the ghats. And I'm walking there with somebody right there. And Banaras is one of the most friendly city, whether they know you or not. You talk to strangers and they come over and just look at my guests. They haven't talked to me. They straight away come to the guests and they're doing this balancing act of the mouth full of pan, as it's called, and the tea. And they're asking them, are you from America? Which I, of course, guess, and I tell them, they're asking, are you from America? And, I've had people just laughing away and feeling so delighted by this. But just to finish this part of your question, the answer, it can also be a very emotional place, poignant, and very heart-wrenching when they reach that ghat for cremation. Whether it's obviously from a boat ride when they're walking far from it, or sometimes they walk closely, keeping, of course, all the protocols of not taking pictures. So we won't be able to share, I think, a picture of that. But what is interesting is that in the West, as most of you obviously know, the whole concept of death and funerals are very discreet. They're pretty discreet. And here, when they come to Varanasi and go to the cremation ghat, they can't believe their eyes. They're looking at the funeral pyres. They're looking at death from such a close proximity. And they're looking at all the rituals, the funerary rituals, without any kind of reservations. It's like, I don't want to use, it's a tight slap on your face because, oh God, this is what we are looking at. How straight away. And many of them are left completely, very, very sad. Some start crying, and some of them suddenly feel the attachment to their families. And, just very recently, just before this lockdown and all, I was in Varanasi with a guest. She's a cancer survivor. And when we finished the tour and came back, she gave me a tight hug and said, thank you, Seema. I'm now not scared of death, and I'm going to leave this world very, very happy. So you can imagine, Mohan, that experience also is something which is very, very significant for a traveler.
Yes, I know. It's quite an intense, emotional experience. But I think people understand that, and I think there's a lot of questions that get answered, like you just mentioned. So, yeah, I can imagine that. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that lovely essence that you gave of how people resonate, with that experience of Varanasi. So we are almost at the end now. So my last question to you is, it's a very simple question, and it's not going to take a long time to answer that. I know what the answer is for myself. And so do you think that every traveler who comes to India must visit Varanasi?
Okay. To all those who are watching and to all the people in the world, I think every person in the world should visit Varanasi at least once in their lifetime. Because Varanasi is one city which doesn't take from you, it only gives. It is a city which teaches you just to give. And I think that's so amazing. And one thing which I'm also very proud to say, as I'm been born and brought up in Varanasi, is that it teaches you the concept or essence of joie de vivre, the joys of life. And in Banaras, we call it Moj Masti, carefree. Just learn to be happy, learn to be just satisfied with what you have. I don't think there's anything beyond that. Just, it's just so wonderful to be joyous. It also gives you a very, very great lesson on understanding life amidst death and death amidst life, valuing our precious life, and also thinking of death as only a transitional phase of life, not something that has to be separated or compartmentalized. And finally, of course, a great sense of accomplishment. Any traveler, I tell you, only leaves accomplished, not with material things, just an accomplishment in their heart, soul, and generally a better feel, good feel. And that's what I would like to say about it.
Thank you so much. Really, we loved that wonderful answer that you gave at the end. So yes, I mean, I have been to Banaras probably 25 times, and I've done rituals there for, and whenever we've been there, I do, as a family, we've been there to perform rituals, So yeah, it's a very, 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 very different feel when you're there by the river, or just walking through the narrow lanes, or even at Sarnath, a beautiful atmosphere where pilgrims from across Buddhist countries come. You see Japanese, you see Sri Lankans, you see Koreans, you see Taiwanese, Thais. I mean, it's wonderful when they just sit there and pray and sing, and so it's a wonderful place. Thank you so much, Seema. So with that, we come to the end of today's session, and I really thank Seema for that wonderful time that we've spent with her. And I just also like to say that on Wednesday we have our last guest speaker coming up, which is again a wonderful story of conservation and wildlife, and I encourage everyone to sign up for that. And with that, I'd like to sign off for tonight. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. Me or Seema, one of us will answer.
Great. So we actually do have some questions. I'm hoping everybody found it as enjoyable as I did. So the first one is, could you recommend a few books on the mythology of Varanasi or India? It would be terrific to send them to clients before their visit.
I will send a list as soon as possible. Is it okay if I could give you the list, Brunilda, and you would share it with the rest?
No,
because I have a wonderful list of amazing books which would be great to go through.
No worries whatsoever. The second question that we have is, how many days would you recommend in Varanasi for our travelers?
I would say spend at least 2 nights and get your, like a day and a half at least, I would say, because there is Sarnath, there's the museum, then we do the 2 trips to the river, one in the morning, one in the evening, and then during the day we can do a nice walk for you in the old city. And if people have any specific interest, like music, for example, we've taken our clients to these gharanas, as Brunilda explained. So these are basically homes of classical musicians, and we can do private performances of classical dance. So there are a lot that can be done. I mean, give me time and we give you experiences. So that's how I look at it, but at least 2 nights. Yes.
Then we have one question. I'm trying to get to them all. what is the recommended stay in Varanasi with Seema as to the best time of year to experience all of the treasures you've talked about today?
So, I suppose you're talking about the accommodations, correct?
Yes, yes.
So there are two possibilities. I mean, in Banaras, always one possibility is to stay close to the river, and the other possibility is to stay away from the river. So if you talk about staying away from the river, then there's a wonderful Taj at the palace of the royal family of Varanasi, which is converted into a very beautiful heritage palace hotel, which has 14 rooms. It used to have only 10 up until now. That's the Nadesar Palace. It's high end. Therefore it's a little expensive. But I think if you can afford it, I think that's the place to stay if you want to stay away from the city. But if you want to really be immersing in the whole activities that happen around the riverside, if you're someone who like walking around the riverside, and then there is another palace called the Bridge Rama Palace, which is also on the river. It's right on the river actually. That would be my choice if you wanted to stay close to the river between these two properties. And there are other 4-star, 5-star hotels in Varanasi, but I think these two are the best in my opinion.
Wonderful. So with that, in the interest of time,
And I think there was another part of the question. What's the time? I would say anywhere between October to March, mid-April is a good time. Winters can get very cold. January, like late December, early January can get cold. Early morning, particularly when you go to the river. But we do, but that's another different time. And it's misty, it's foggy, but that's another different experience. But otherwise, I think October to March or mid-April is a good time to travel. Yes.
Great. I'll be signing up right away. With that, I would like to thank everyone who participated today. Make sure to join us for our last session, which will be on Wednesday, when Sari Freeman, who is the owner of Passages, will be with us. And we will again have Mohan with another special guest. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.